Aikwe, Neknamalita, and this is my channel, The Midnight Librarian, and today I will be talking about my 24 of 2025. You might have seen this a bunch in BookTube recently, but you may have seen it as like 25 of 2025. So I did a challenge like this in 2024. A lot of booktubers did, where they read 24 books in the year of 2024. Same with 23 of 2023, etc. And so I realized I haven't been doing great at this challenge. If we take a quick look at my stats for 2024, I actually DNF'd a lot of these books. A lot of them I ended up starting and just wasn't getting into, wasn't interested anymore, and so DNF'd them. And basically how I did it was that it was a random number generator. And basically a random number generator, I put how many books I have on my Goodreads want to read list and let it pick for me. This was, I thought, a great way to be able to explore some of the things that I have on my want to read shelf that I completely forgot about, and kind of forced me into like, am I really interested in reading this? And I think that helped a lot in terms of like picking up some of these books and realizing like, yeah, I'm not that interested actually, and just DNFing them. I was fairly loose when it came to DNFing books this year, and I'm not upset about it. Life is short, and too short to read books that I am not interested in. And ultimately, reading is a passion, and it's something that I enjoy, and if I am forced to read something I don't want to, it just becomes a chore, and I would rather it not. So because I haven't really, like, yeah, there's no punishment for it, yeah, there's a couple books I didn't get to, but I am still interested in, and I have plans for 2025 for that. However, for 2025, I don't want to boost that number to 2025. And I'm curious when others are going to start realizing that. I think two mandatory books to read a month is perfectly fine for me, or to attempt to read a month, I think is great. I think that 24 books in 12 months is fine. It gives me enough space to kind of play with being a mood reader and reading other books that I want to. I think if I get any higher, I'm gonna start feeling the pressure. So, and I didn't have time necessarily to read the books that I had wanted to, that was on my list last in 2024. So I'm sticking with 2024, or sticking with 24 books in 2025 is the long and short of it. As I said before, I typically do a random number generator and find whatever books typically is in my want to read list for Goodreads. I decided don't want to do that this year for 2025. I've done it a couple times, like not just for 2023 and 2024, but I've done it a couple times in preparation for this for 2025, and ultimately, like, each time I was slightly disappointed. As soon as the books were picked, I wasn't feeling it. So, and I do want to like read more off of my physical TBR. I have a lot of books back here, and I would like to get to them, and this hopefully would be a way to kind of force myself to do that. I only read, I think, 22 books from my physical TBR, and I'm sure that part of that is books that I have. 22 books is what I read from my physical TBR, I think. So this is an attempt to kind of like push myself to read more of what I actually physically own. Not to say that all the books on this list are going to be books from my backlist. So I gave myself 6 new release books, or backlist books that I have on physical books that I have that I want to read. A lot of them are backlist books. Some of them, there's like one in particular that I'm seeing on here that actually came out like this in 2024. It is backlist books that I don't yet own. And I say backlist very loosely. I would say backlist is anything beyond a year out published. But there's some of these on this list that I just didn't get, or I don't have, or I can get easily through the library, or like I wasn't able to get in 2024. So there are a couple 2024 releases that I think it'll be a little harder for me to get through the library. But like, I think, I don't know what my reasoning is, but I kind of utilized it as like I was still interested in this 2024 release and didn't have time or money for it. So now I'm prioritizing it in 2025. But there are a couple backlist items on here too that I also just don't have. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Hopefully this makes sense. First one on my list, I'm just gonna go like from left to right how I see it. So we're gonna, at every 4, there's gonna be a new release. There's in no particular order other than what I see them as. So first one off the bat is a new release for 2025, and it actually comes out in January, and that is the new Adrienne Young, and it's A Sea of Unspoken Things. I have read the Unmaking of June Farrow and really enjoyed it. I am wanting to read the Spells for Forgetting. I think I'm gonna like it, but the audiobook just wasn't gripping me, so I am expecting it through Interlibrary Alone. So I'm hoping to be able to like physically read it. But I'm also hoping that, so it's gonna, I think I'm gonna start off pretty strong in the year 2025 with Adrienne Young, and I'm hoping that I enjoy her writing. I did for one of them, so I'm hoping I continue to, and hopefully it's not just a one-off. But A Sea of Unspoken Things, we're following James, who is a twin with her brother Johnny, and they are connected in more ways than just intuition. So when Johnny gets into a fatal accident, James knows before she gets the phone call. She ends up having to delve into her brother's life and realizes that that connection's still there even with him gone, but she's also realizing that there's a bunch of things she didn't know about her brother, and it's like, I think she's in some kind of small town in California trying to settle her brother's affairs. So that's all I really want to know going into it. I'm very curious about sibling dynamics, and I'm curious how Adrienne Young writes and how that's going to delve into this, because there were a couple of times within the Unmaking of June Farrow that had me tear up. So, and I've heard similar things to the Spells of Forgetting. I'm very curious about it. So there's that. Next, I have a book that's been on my physical TBR for a while, and I love the look of it, and I think I just need to read it. And that's Folk by Zoe Gilbert. This is such a gorgeous cover, and it's so just vibrant, and it's just so many details. When was this published? I can't even recall when exactly I got it. It was published in 2018. I don't even really remember what it's about anymore. The remote island village of Neverness is a world far from our time and place. The air hangs rich with coconut scent of gorse and the salty bite of the sea. Harsh winds scour the rocky coastline. The villagers' lives are inseparable from nature and its enchantments. Verlin Webb, born with a wing for an arm, unfurls his feathers in defiance of past shame. Plum is snatched by a water bowl and dragged to his lair. What the heck is going on here? So it sounds like magic fantastical. As the tales of this island community interweave over the course of a generation, their earthly desires, resentments, idle gossip, and painful losses create a staggering original world, crackling with echoes of ancient folklore, but entirely wonderfully her own. Zoe Gilbert's Folk is a dark, beautiful, and intoxicating debut. Okay, I am a little nervous about this now. Just because that second paragraph, someone born with a wing for an arm. I don't know who Plum is, but they're snatched by whatever a water bowl is. Crab Scary takes his first run through the gorse maze. Madden sleepwalks through violent storms haunted by horses and her father's wishes. Okay, but I think this will help figure out, like, am I really into this, or I just need to get rid of it? So there's that. Another one that's been on my TBR for a while that I would like to get to. Where'd it go? Oh, I did pull it. Duh. Okay. Okay, I've had this one since it came out, and I actually forgot when it came out. So let me check that. This came out in 2017, and I have not read it. It was a booktube darling for a little bit there, and I haven't heard anyone talk about it since. But that is Autonomous by Annalee Newitz. From my understanding, this is a dystopian-esque world of the United States. We're following Jack. It's the year 2144. Jack is an anti-patent scientist turned drug pirate, a pharmaceutical Robin Hood traversing the world in a submarine fabricating cheap scripts for poor people who can't otherwise afford them. But her latest drug hack leaves a trail of lethal overdoses as people become addicted to their work, repeating job tasks until they become insane. That's all I know. That's all I know. That's all I really want to know. Going into this, like I said, I've heard good things about it. I just want to finally read this. I think this is going to be fairly... I think this is going to be relevant during this time. One that I don't actually own. So this one I borrowed from actually the library my mom works in, and that is The Marrow Thieves by Sherry Demeline. I have not read this yet, and I feel so bad for not doing it. I hear such great things. This is also a dystopian. Yes, it's... Sorry, this book was lost for a little bit, and like my mom thought it was me, but I'm like, I'm pretty sure I turned that in. She's like, I don't think you did. And I'm like, ah, and then I found it. So, whoops. But yeah, this is also dystopian. People stop dreaming, and because of that, a madness is spreading, and it turns out the indigenous people of North America have the cure to be able to dream again, and it's the marrow in their bones. So they start getting hunted. That's, again, all I know. That's all I want to know. I've heard great things about this. I think there was a sequel that came out that I've heard. Was there a sequel? I'm pretty sure there was a sequel. Was it Another Edition or Demeline? I'm not sure. But yeah, I feel like I'm not I'm being a good Indigenous reviewer because I haven't read this book yet. So I need to read this year. The next new 2025 new release that I would like to get to is Buffalo Hunter Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. Stephen Graham Jones is a Blackfoot author who is notorious for his horror writing. I have had hit and misses with him. I particularly really enjoyed The Only Good Indian. I disliked his Heart of a Chainsaw series. So people have mixed things about him, to say the least, but I'm very curious about his work, and I think we'll always be curious about it. So he's not necessarily a favorite author, but he's one that I will like auto buy from just to see what's going on, but also to support him. So Buffalo Hunter Hunter is his newest release for 2025. Let's see, when is it supposed to come out? It's supposed to come out March 18th of 2025. And basically this is like a historical fiction horror where we're following, it's I think in diary format, or there's a diary found from a pastor. There's also like a massacre of Black people, and we are kind of following the perspective of one particular Blackfoot warrior called Good Stab, and I think it's in a diary format supposedly, or there's a diary found, but there's also vampires involved. And ultimately I don't want to read too much into it because I want to go into this not knowing much of anything. So I'm excited about it. That's the next one on my list of new releases. I think we can like get the gist that a lot of these books that I have physically have had for a while. So the next one also I've had, this was one of the ones for Page Habit, if anyone remembers that book box. So basically it's no longer a thing, but basically they would choose a new release book. They would have the author write notes about bits and pieces of them writing, their process writing it, and then include 2 books that inspired the author to write this book. It was a really cool box actually, and this is I think I don't know if it was one of the last ones. I had to stop getting it just because it was kind of spendy, but they stopped also doing it. So I have a letter from the author and then like a sticky note as well, but that is Blackfish City by Sam J. Miller. Also believe it's dystopian. Can you feel the theme going through here? After the climate wars, a floating city is constructed in the Arctic Circle, a remarkable feat of mechanical and social engineering, complete with geothermal heating and sustainable energy. The city denizens have become accustomed to a roughshod way of living. However, the city is starting to fray along the edges. Crime and corruption have set in. The contradictions of incredible wealth alongside duress, poverty are spawning unrest, and a dangerous epidemic nicknamed the Breaks is spreading, ravaging the population. When a strange new visitor arrives, a woman riding an orca with a polar bear at her side, the city is entranced. The Orca-mancer, as she's known, very subtly brings together 4 people, each living on the periphery, to stage an unprecedented acts of resistance. by banding together to save their city before it crumbles under the weight of its own decay. They will learn shocking truths about themselves. I'm curious of when this one was published. But yeah, there's little like sticky notes throughout the book that the book box put in it. 2018. So yeah. Next, I actually have a sequel, and I've been meaning to get to the sequel and just haven't. Mostly because the first one in the series, I don't know, I liked, but there was a bunch of controversy around it. So the sequel is Deathless Divide by Justina Ireland. The first one is called Dread Nation, and basically, from my understanding, Justina Ireland was inspired by Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies. Like, I don't know if it was the movie or the book, but basically, I don't know where I heard this from, and maybe I'm making it up, and I'm hoping I'm not. But from my understanding, Justina Ireland saw that movie and went, those white ladies wouldn't be fighting zombies themselves. They'd be having their slaves do it, or their servants or whoever. They wouldn't be fighting the zombies. So basically, Dread Nation was like in response to Pride and Prejudice, but set in America, and it also inspired by the boarding schools that Indigenous children were sent to. So, but Dread Nation got quite the had quite the I don't know, there was an issue with it. I remember enjoying it, and it was when I first started BookTube. I don't know if it was the first time or the second time. But basically, Dread Nation, we're following this young black girl who ends up, I think it was like on the brink of the Civil War. It was like during the brink of the Civil War where soldiers were actually coming up from the graves and attacking people, so zombies. And so a bunch of black children and Indigenous children were sent to boarding schools to learn how to fight for their masters, essentially. I can't recall if like slavery was really abolished or if it was halted because of the zombie apocalypse. I can't recall. But basically the problem with Dread Nation was that even though the books were inspired by boarding schools, there's no Indigenous people in there. There's like one Indigenous person, and he's like considered a bad guy. And so it was just kind of like, at the time I didn't mind it because I was just like, oh, well, if there's no representation, it's better than bad representation. But there's an erasure still with no representation at all. I remember there was a whole thing around it. So I kind of put off Deathless Divide. I want to reread Dread Nation because it's actually a really cool cover. So I actually really enjoy this cover. I think it's like intense and just, it's awesome. This one I'm a little, but here. Jane McKean was born 2 days before the dead began to walk the battlefields of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, derailing the war between the states and changing the nation forever. In this new America, safety for all depends on the work of a few, and laws like the Negro and Native Re-Education Act require certain children to attend combat schools to learn to put down the dead. But there are also opportunities, and Jane is studying to become an attendant, trained in both weaponry and etiquette to protect well-to-do. It's a chance for a better life for Negro girls like Jane. But that's not a life she wants. Almost finished with her education at Miss Preston's School of Combat in Baltimore, Jane is set on returning to her Kentucky home and doesn't pay much mind to the politics of the eastern cities. With her talk of returning America to the glory of its days before the dead rose, but when families around Baltimore County begin to go missing, Jane is caught in the middle of a desperate fight against some powerful enemies, and the restless dead, it would seem, are the least of her problems. I want to reread this. For the most part, remember what happens, but ultimately this one's the one on the list. So hopefully that inspires me to read both of them. And then a somewhat backlist that was actually published in October, I believe, of 2024, is the latest Cy Montgomery. I have read quite a few of her works. November of 2024. Cy Montgomery is a naturalist and writes a lot of nonfiction. If you are new to my channel, then hi, welcome. I'm a pretty big Cy Montgomery fan. I enjoy her works. Nothing has quite hit quite as well as The Soul of an Octopus, but there's been some pretty close ones as well, and so far, like, I've enjoyed most of her work. I haven't read all of her work, but I hope to at some point. But her latest release is What the Chicken Knows, a new appreciation for the world's most familiar bird. For more than 2 decades, Cy Montgomery, who's the soul of an octopus, was a National Book Award finalist, has kept a flock of chickens in her backyard. Each chicken has individual personalities, outgoing or shy, loud or quiet, reckless or cautious, and connects with Cy in her own way. In this short, delightful book, Cy takes us inside the flock and reveals all the things that make chickens such remarkable. Only hours after leaving the egg, they are able to walk, run, peck. Relationships are important to them, and the average chicken can recognize more than 100 other chickens. Yeah, I don't know. It just sounds fun. And I wanted, I just wanted it on here. I thought it would be a fun little, reprieve. Because I think a lot of these books kind of go in a dark. Okay, the next new release book for 2025, I have Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang by Kylie Lee Baker. I think I do have another Kylie Lee Baker, The Keeper of Night. I just haven't read it yet. I've heard good things. I just haven't. But this one, the cover really catches my eye. I think it's really fun. And it's a horror mystery thriller, and apparently adult. I believe her other one, The Night Keeper, is young adult. I'm not entirely sure. Cora Zhang is a crime scene cleaner, washing away the remains of brutal murders and suicides in Chinatown. But none of them seem so terrible when she's already witnessed the most horrific thing possible, her sister Delilah being pushed in front of her train. Before fleeing the scene, the murderer shouted 2 words to her, Bat Eater. So the bloody messes don't really bother Cora. She's more bothered by the germs on the subway railing, the bare hands of strangers, the hidden viruses in every corner, and the bite marks on her coffee table. Of course, ever since Delilah was killed in front of her, Cora can't be sure what's real and what's in her head. Okay, so I never quite got through the whole synopsis, and that's not even the whole thing. I don't like unreliable narrating tropes in books. I have a issue with it, but I'm very curious about it, so I'm willing to try it. So this one sounds fun. This one doesn't come out until April 29th of 2025, so we'll see how that goes. For my physical backlist, I have Witches by Brenda Lozano. I've been really curious about this just because, the cover. I remember this was a cover buy from a local bookstore. When was it published? Oh, it was published originally in 2020, but it was the English translation copyright is 2022. So yeah, it's by Brenda Lozano, but it was translated from Spanish by Heather Cleary. Paloma is dead, but before she was murdered, before she was Paloma, she was a traditional healer named Gaspar. Before she was murdered, she taught her cousin Feliciana the secrets of ceremonies known as validas, and about the language and the book that unlock their secrets. Zoe, a journalist, is sent to report on Paloma's murder in her mountain village of San Felipe. There, she meets Feliciana, and the 2 women's lives twist around each other in a dance of macabre. Feliciana tells Zoe the story of her struggle to become an accepted healer in her community, and Zoe begins to understand the hidden history of her own experience as a woman, finding her way in a hostile environment shaped by and for men. Weaving together 2 parallel narratives, mirror and refract each other, this extraordinary novel the healer as a storyteller and the writer as a healer, and offers a generous and nuanced understanding of a world that can be at turns violent and exultant, cruel and full of hope. I haven't had this one as long as some of the others on my list, but it's one I've been wanting to get to, and it's relatively short. So next, I've had this one for a bit too, and I feel like everyone has read it and I haven't. So that is 6 of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I don't particularly want to read the trilogy that supposedly comes before this of Shadow and Bone. I don't want to say supposedly. I mean, it does come before this, but I don't really want to read it. So I think I'm going to jump right into 6 of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I have read, this is, okay, my bad, that's backwards. We're upside down. I have read Ninth House. I read the Ninth House and the other one. Don't remember what it's called, but it has a rabbit on it. I read that one. I have not read this one. All I know is that there's magic. fantastical, and there's a heist. That's all I really need to know. I haven't even watched the show, which is, I think, based off the first 3. But there's elements of this one. I know there was like a hope that there was going to be a spin-off series before it got canceled. My mom really enjoyed the show, and she actually enjoyed the first 3 books of the Shadow and Bone series. But this is the one I would really rather jump into. It's about a heist. It's fantasy. That's all I really want to know going into it. Like, I think it's like 6 misfits getting together to do this heist. So yeah, that's all I got. Like, I remember getting this when it came out and had the black sprayed edges. I've been wanting the next one, the Something Kingdom, with the sprayed edges as well, but I forced myself to not get it until I read and like actually enjoyed this one first. Okay, next I don't have it physically, but it is a backlist one that I don't have, and I feel like I could get it through Interlibrary Loan because it was published in 2015, and that is The Savage Instinct by Marjorie DeLuca. It's historical fiction, England 1873. Clara Blackstone has just been released after 1 year in a private asylum for the insane. Clara has 2 goals: to reunite with her husband Henry and to never ever return to the asylum. As she enters Durham, Clara finds her carriage surrounded by a mob gathered to witness the imprisonment of Mary Ann Colton, England's first female serial killer, accused of poisoning nearly 20 people, including her husbands and children. Clara soon finds the oppressive confinement of her marriage no less terrifying than the white-tiled walls of Hoxton. And as she grows increasingly suspicious of Henry's intentions, her fascination with Cotton grows. Soon, Cotton is not just a notorious figure from the headlines, but an unlikely confidant, mentor, and perhaps accomplice in Clara's struggle to protect her money, her freedom, and her life. So this, I will not lie, I don't remember putting this on my Goodreads want to read, and actually it wasn't until I did my randomizer to prep for this that this came up, and I'm like, oh damn. So I actually left this on when I refigured it to have this me picking and choosing. I think this is gonna be really interesting. Okay, the next 2025 release is not expected to come out until March 18th. Yeah, the same time as Buffalo Hunter Hunter. Interesting, because this author is also Indigenous, and that's Erica T. Worth and her latest release, and that is The Haunting of Room 904. I have not read White Horse. I attempted to and got bored, and then hadn't heard great reviews on it, and actually people found it boring. So I haven't gone back to it, and honestly don't really care to, but I still have it just in case, because sometimes like reading the next book makes me, or not that this is like a series or anything, but sometimes reading an author's newest book has me curious about their backlist, so that's what I'm gonna hope. But this one, we are following Olivia Becente, who was never supposed to have the gift. The ability to commune with the dead was the specialty of her sister, Naish. But when Naish dies unexpectedly under strange circumstances, somehow Olivia suddenly can't stop seeing or hearing from spirits. A few years later, she's the most in-demand paranormal investigator in Denver. She's good at her job, but the loss of Naish haunts her. That's when she hears from the Brown Palace, a landmark Denver hotel. The owner can't quite explain it, but every few years a girl is found dead in room 904, no matter what room she checked into the night before. As Olivia tries to understand these disturbing deaths, the past and the present collide, and Olivia's investigation forces her to confront a mysterious and possible dangerous cult. I have no idea how I feel about cults in terms of books, but this one's intriguing to me, so we're gonna give it a try. My next backlist physical TBR isn't actually a backlist, actually. It's one that came out in 2024, so I don't really call it the backlist, though it's about to be one, I guess. But that is The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. This one I think I actually got signed by Monica Kim at ALA. And then I actually have the Ebernite edition as well. So I have 2 copies of this, and I don't know if I like it or not. So I am curious about it, mostly because the eyeballs. I don't like body horror, but I think this has to do with a serial killer, and that intrigues me. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings. Crying in H Barn meets My Sister the Serial Killer. I don't know if those ever actually align when they do that to help promote books. I read Crying in H Mart and My Sister, the Serial Killer. It's the first time I've read either of the books that they try to market for a book. So I guess we'll see. Ji Won's life tumbles into disarray on the wake of her appa's extramarital affair and subsequent departure. Her mother distraught, her younger sister hurt and confused, her college freshman grades failing, her dreams horrifying, yet enticing. In them, Ji Won walks through bloody rooms full of eyes. Succulent blue eyes, salivatingly blue eyes. Eyes the same shape and shade as George's, who is Uma's obnoxious new boyfriend. He brags about his puffed-up consulting job, ogles Asian waitresses while dining out, and acts condescendingly towards Ji Won and her sister, as if he deserves all of Uma's fawning adoration. George doesn't deserve anything from her family. Ji Won will make sure of that. I remember Kayla from Books and Lala reading it. I don't quite remember her review of it, and I don't know if I've necessarily heard anybody else's review of it, but everyone seems intrigued to read it. So next, I have A History of What Comes Next by Sylvain Neuvel. I forget the trilogy, the Themis Files. I absolutely love the Themis Files when they, I think I didn't read them until a couple years ago. It wasn't quite when they came out in 2016, but probably 2023. Absolutely love them. So I was really curious about A History of What Comes Next by the same author. Always run, never fight, preserve the knowledge, survive at all costs, take them to the stars. For 99 identical generations, Maya's family has shaped human history to push them to the stars, making brutal, wrenching choices and sacrificing countless lives. Her turn comes at the dawn of the age of rocketry. Her mission to lure Werner von Braun away from the Nazi Party and into the American rocket program and secure the future of space race. But Maya's family is not the only group pushing the levers of history. An even more ruthless enemy lurks behind the scenes. When did this one come out? I think it came out after the Themis Files. And I vaguely remember some folks talking about it, but not very many. I'm also just curious if he's come out with anything of recent. I remember The Test coming out, that in 2019. People were like obsessed with that one for a little bit. So, and this is the Take Them to this, A History of What Comes Next is the Take Them to the Stars series. So far, it looks like a duology. The second one came out in 2022. Nope, there's a third one that came out in 2023. But otherwise, let's see, let's not do by popularity. What if we do by original publication year? Yeah, so that's the last thing he's published. And then for the one that I don't have, it's one, I don't know how I stumbled across it actually, but it's one that I'm fairly curious by. So it's called You Better Watch Out by James S. Murray and Darren Wearmouth. And I guess James S. Murray is better known as Murr on the hit TV show Practical Jokers, which I don't like watching, but Brad does. But this is a Christmas horror thriller that was published in October of 2024. So my hope is to read it next holiday season. 48 hours until Christmas, Jessica Kane wakes up with blurred vision, ears ringing, and in excruciating pain, a gash in her head and blood running down her face. The last thing she remembers is going for a run and something or someone hitting her in the head. It doesn't take her long to realize that she is trapped in an unknown, deserted town with 5 other strangers who share similar stories of being attacked and stranded there. Unsure why or how they got there, she knows one thing for certain: she has to find a way out. That becomes nearly impossible when someone is meticulously orchestrating their deaths, one by one, and the only thing Jessica can do is watch the life leave their eyes. The fenced-in town is the killer's very own playground, and there's nowhere left to hide. She better watch out because she could be next. Yeah, it just sounded really interesting, and I believe the buzzword... okay, so I said I was going to read it during the holidays, but it may be for October because the buzzword challenge for October 2025 is to read a book with a weapon on the cover, and that is clearly a very well-wrapped knife. So, okay, so the next, not yet published, but will be come 2025, it's expected to come out January 14th, and that is Water Moon by Samantha Soda Yumbao. A woman inherits a pawn shop where you can sell your regrets, and then embarks on a magical journey when a charming young physicist wanders into the shop in this dreamlike and enchanting fantasy novel. On the back street in Tokyo lies a pawn shop, but not everyone can find it. Most will see a cozy ramen restaurant, and only the chosen ones, those who are lost, will find places to pawn their life choices and deepest regrets. Hana Ishikawa wakes on her first morning as the pawn shop's new owner to find it ransacked, the shop's most precious acquisition stolen, and her father missing. And then into the shop stumbles a charming stranger, quite unlike its other customers, for he offers help instead of seeking it. Together they must journey through a mystical world to find Hana's father and a stolen choice, by way of rain puddles, rides on paper cranes, and the bridge between midnight and morning, and a night market in the clouds. But as they get closer to the truth, Hana must reveal a secret of her own, and risk making a choice she will never be able to take back. The cover is absolutely stunning. The concept sounds really interesting. It's interesting to me that so far Japanese based books that I've read that are considered cozy mystery have these shops or restaurants or detective agencies that can only be found by certain people who are looking for it. I don't know, it's just interesting, and I don't know, that's probably just because I just finished the Kamigawa Food Detectives, the first one, not too long ago, so it's just, I don't know, just something I've noticed. The next backlist physical TBR is actually a book of the month pick that I had. I no longer subscribe to book of the month. I'm actively replacing my book of the month books with not labeled book of the month books, but I still have a couple of them that I would like to just read just because I was interested in them and just want to get through them. But Shay Earnshaw, I read The Wicked Deep, didn't like it. Read A History of Wild Places, found it interesting. I don't know if it was it was interesting enough, I guess. I'd probably rate it 3 stars. I didn't read it at the time because I was still I didn't hate it. Actually, I'm changing that rating to a 1 because I really didn't like that. So this one is A Wilderness of Stars by Shay Earnshaw. I don't remember what it's about. When all is lost, look to the stars. Vega has lived in the valley her whole life, forbidden by her mother to leave the safety of its borders because of the unknown threats waiting for her in the wilds beyond. But when Vega sees an omen in the sky, one she cannot ignore, she is forced to leave the protective boundaries of the valley. Yet the outside world is much more terrifying than Vega could have ever imagined. People are gravely sick. They lose their eyesight and their hearing just before they lose their lives. But Vega has a secret. She is the last astronomer, a title carried from generation to generation, and she is the only one who understands knowledge of the stars. Knowledge that could hold the key to a cure. So when locals spot a tattoo on Vega's neck in the shape of a constellation, the mark of an astronomer, chaos erupts. Fearing for her life, Vega is rescued by a girl named Cricket, who leads her to Noah, a boy marked by his own mysterious tattoos. So yeah, that's all I really want to know. I'm really kind of curious about this actually after reading that. So hopefully it's good. I don't know. Maybe just reading Shay Earnshaw's stuff, I get more and more interested. There's others that she's written that I am also curious about, but I will hold off until I read more of her backlist. Dragonfall by L.R. Lamb. I've heard not great things about this. I heard it was fairly disappointing. The cover is absolutely gorgeous. I've read Goldilocks by L.R. Lamb, which was a climate science fiction of sorts that I actually kind of was okay. It was 3 stars. It wasn't worth keeping the book, so I actually donated it to the library I work at. And I got something in my eye. But this one I'm curious about. This one, I think it's young adult, actually. I don't know, it feels young adult, and I also think it's queer romance. So basically, human society banished, killed off and banished the remaining dragons to, a world beyond, and now generations later those same human societies actually worship them as deities, but the dragons don't forget, and actually they're trying to escape from the world they were banished to. So one particular dragon who's able to shift into a human has to earn the trust of a human and get them to bond with him so that he can kill him and bring back the rest of the dragons, from my understanding. Yeah, I remember some folks saying that this was very lackluster and disappointing, but I don't know, I'm kind of holding out hope for it, but I guess we'll see this year. And then for the backlist that I don't own, this was actually published in May of 2023, and it's, I think, a graphic novel, actually, and I just found it recently and I want it, so that's my excuse. It's called The Council of Frogs by Matt Emmons, and just the cover of it looks adorable. So, sent out by his father, a kindly old swamp lich, one tiny frog must leave the safety of his home in order to deliver a message of grave importance to a warlock in order to save the entire council of frogs. Aided by many unconventional friends along the way, this little frog discovers the dangers of the world beyond his beloved swamp grove. But the world is a big, harsh place, and he may need more than his dandelion hat and a tiny sword to make it back home before it's too late. This sounds adorable, and I want it. So yeah, this... Oh my god, okay. Okay, my final 2025 release that I'd like to read for 24 of 2025 is expected to come out July 15th of 2025, which I think has been pushed back because I thought originally it was in June. But that is Girl in the Creek by Wendy N. Wagner. The Clackamas National Forest has always been a sanctuary for evil, human and alien. The shadows of the looming trees, long abandoned mines, shelter poachers and serial killers alike. Then there's the Ruined Hotel on the outskirts of a picturesque small town, Faraday, Oregon, nestled in the foothills of Mount Hood. The one drowning in mushrooms and fungus not even the local expert can identify. Not to mention the stacks of missing person cases. Freelance writer Erin Harper arrives in Faraday to find out what happened to her brother, whose disappearance in the forest has haunted her for years. But someone else has gone missing, and when Erin finds her in the creek, the girl vanishes again, this time from the morgue, and days later her fingerprints show up at a murder scene. Maybe it's a serial killer, or maybe it's the spores infecting the forest and those lost inside. Erin must find answers quickly before anyone else goes missing. This one I had kept putting on and off my must read of 2025 when I was doing the random generator, just because but it's also the reason why I decided to add 6 new releases as opposed to just 2, which was what I let myself do in the past, because I ultimately really wanted to get to these 6. So yeah, I think this will be really fun. There's a lot of darker theme things within this TBR, but I think it'll be fun. It's not necessarily a backlist, but for my physical TBR, because I think it came out this year, 2024, February, so it's almost a backlist. But that is The Secret History of Bigfoot, Field Notes on North American Monster. This is a nonfiction, and I don't have very many. It's just this one and the chicken one. So this one I'm fairly curious, and I ordered it I think just shortly after it was published, and then I ended up reading Devolution by, is it Max Brooks? And that one is about Sasquatch in Washington, I believe. So it's interesting that Girl in the Creek I don't know, it connects in my brain, okay? But this one is about Bigfoot. Real or not, why do we want to believe? Bigfoot is an instantly recognizable figure. Through the decades, this elusive primate has been featured in movies and books and on coffee mugs, beer koozies, car polish, and CBD oil, which begs the question, what is it about Bigfoot that caught hold of our imaginations? Journalist and self-diagnosed skeptic John O'Connor is fascinated by Sasquatch. Curious to learn more, he embarks on a quest through the North American wilds in search of Bigfoot, its myth and meaning. Alongside the eccentric cast of characters, he explores the zany and secretive world of cryptozoology, tracking Bigfoot through the ancient folklore to Harry and the Hendersons while examining the forces behind our ever-widening belief in the supernatural. As O'Connor treks through the shrouded forests of the Pacific Northwest, listens to first-hand accounts, and attends Bigfoot conventions, he's left wondering what happens when the lines of myth and reality blur. Yeah, I'm just really curious about it. I know that we're not... California is not considered Pacific Northwest. Northern, I feel like us here in Northern California, and I say that because San Francisco is not northern to me. We are 6 hours north of San Francisco. I think people tend to forget that there's more to that, more to California. 2 hours away from Oregon, that we kind of think of ourselves as Pacific Northwest, but like Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, for whatever reason, don't consider us part of it. There is like a large Bigfoot lore around here as well. I think this is really interesting, particularly after reading Devolution. I'm really curious about it, so I think this will be a fun one. I'm gonna go with The Prince of the Skies by Antonia Ichirb. This is based on the true story of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, which is the author of The Little Prince. This one I got in Palm Springs like 3 years ago. I've been wanting to read it and just haven't read it yet, so I want to. It's a gorgeous freaking cover, and it's a thick one, over 500 pages. In the 1920s, long before he wrote The Little Prince, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry was an accomplished pilot, along with Jean Mermot and Henry Guillaume. He was chosen to pioneer new mail routes across the globe. No distance was too far and no mountain too high. Each letter had to reach its destination. The three friends soared through the air while a world torn apart by wars and political factions awaited them back on solid ground. Don't mind my cat. This is a gripping narrative of death-defying plane crashes, heart-rending love affairs, and unexpected fame, as well as an homage to Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, an unforgettable writer who touched the lives of millions of readers. I read The Little Prince. I've read it a couple times, and I think I want to like it. I really do, but I don't. Those last two were kind of like last minute whim changes. So then the final book, which I don't have and was published in 2024, was The Bog Wife by Kay Chronister, and was the nominee for the Goodreads Choice Award for 2024 for Reader's Favorite Horror. I've been wanting to read it. I was actually really kind of sad that it wasn't the choice for the Literally Dead Book Club. Since time immemorial, the Hadessley family has tended the cranberry bog. In exchange, the bog sustains them. The staunch seasons of their lives are governed by a strict covenant that is renewed each generation with the ritual sacrifice of their patriarch, and in return the bog produces a bog wife, brought to life from vegetation. This woman is meant to carry on the family line, but when the bog fails or refuses to honor the bargain, the Hadessleys, a group of discordant siblings still grieving the mother who mysteriously disappeared years earlier, face an unknown future. That's all I know. That's all I really want to know. I want to read this book. So that is it in terms of the books that I hope of my 24 of 2025. If you've read any of these, please let me know your thoughts. Please, no spoilers. I think it's an interesting combination, but I am seeing some themes of things that I tend to lean towards when it comes to my reading. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. Otherwise, if you don't feel like answering at all, let's go ahead and put the star emoji. That seems to be like, two books had stars on it, so let's go with that. I'm really nervous about Folk, honestly. I was not impressed with that synopsis. But we'll see. That's the whole point of this. So particularly I think when it comes to these backlist books, I think it'll help in terms of like, do I keep them or do I get rid of them? I think this will help. Yeah. So thank you so much. Thank you for your support. Thank you for listening, that you are in the mental mindset to enjoy your reading, and I hope to see you in another video very soon. Ciao.